रंजन यशोदानंदन भजन रंजन तीरा अनुचा यमुन तीरा वनचा रात माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपीचन वल्लभा गिरिवरदा जय गोपीचन वल्लभा गिरिवरदा यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारि यमुना तीरा वनचारि राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा शील प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा शील प्रभुपादा जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजक सदस्य श्रीमती श्री भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ISKCON संस्थापक श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजक सदस्य श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। जय विष्णुपाद लकर किशोरदास बाबा महाराज की जय। जय विष्णुपाद सच्चिदानंद श्रील भक्तिवेदांत ठाकुर की जय। जय विष्णुपाद वैष्णव सर्व श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबा महाराज की जय। जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जी गोपाल भट्ट नाशक गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नमाचार्य श्रीदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से गो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य भगवान पर भक्त बिंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपिनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। श्री श्री गौरांगी बैंगलोरीश्वर भगवान की जय। हिमायतपुर धाम की जय। श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथार्थ श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। ISKCON वर्तमान गुरु की जय। समाज भक्ति की जय। गौरव प्रेमानंद देव Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembly. All glories to the assembly. All glories to the assembly. All glories to Guru and Chief Covering. All glories to Shiv Bhagwan ki Jai. Hare Krishna. So welcome to the Friday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 30, Text 8 and Text 9. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamati Rahe Ashtaprayeshu Apatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishti. Text number 8. Akshiptatmendriya Strinham Asatinam Chamaya Raho Rachitaya Yapaihi Shishunam Kalabhashinam Akshiptatmendriya Strinham Asatinam Chamaya Raho Rachitaya Lapaihi Shishunam Kalabhashinam Akshiptatmendriya Strinham Asatinam Chamaya Raho Rachitaya Lapaihi Shishunam Kalabhashinam. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. He gives heart and senses to a woman who falsely charms him with Maya. He enjoys solitary embraces and talking with her, and he is enchanted by the sweet words of the small children. Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Family life within the kingdom of illusory energy Maya is just like a prison for the eternal living entity. In prison, a prisoner is shackled by iron chains and iron bars. Similarly, a conditioned soul is shackled by the charming beauty of a woman, by her solitary embraces and talks of so-called love, and by the sweet words of his small children. Thus, he forgets his real identity. In this verse, the words Strinam, Asatinam indicate that womanly love is just to agitate the mind of man. Actually, in the material world, there is no love. Both the man and the woman and the man are interested in their sense gratification. For sense gratification, a woman creates an illusory love, and the man becomes enchanted by such false love and forgets his real beauty. When there are children, as the result of such a combination, the next attraction is to the sweet words of the children. The love of the woman at home and the talk of the children make one a secure prisoner, and thus he cannot leave his home. Such a person is termed in Vedic language a Grihamedi, which means one whose center of attraction is home. Grihastha refers to one who lives with family, wife, and children, but whose real purpose of living is to develop Krishna consciousness. One is therefore advised to become a Grihastha and not a Grihamedi. The Grihastha's concern is to get out of the family life created by illusion and enter into real family life with Krishna, whereas the Grihamedi's business is to repeatedly chain himself to so-called family life in one life after another and perpetually remain in the darkness of Maya. Text 9. Griheshu puta dharmeshu dukkha tantreshu atandritaha kurvan dukkha pratikaram sukhavan manyate grihi. Translation of 40 verse. The attached householder remains in his family life, which is full of diplomacy and politics, always spreading miseries and controlled by acts of sense gratification. He acts just to counteract the reactions of all his miseries. And if he can successfully counteract such miseries, he thinks that he is happy. In Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead himself certifies the material world as an impermanent place that is full of miseries. There is no question of happiness in this material world, either individually or in terms of family, society, or country. If something is going on in the name of happiness, that is illusion. Here in this material world, happiness means successful counteraction to the effects of distress. The material world is so made that unless one becomes a clever diplomat, his life will be a failure. Not to speak of human society, even the society of lower animals, the birds and bees, cleverly manages its bodily demands of eating, sleeping, and mating. Human society competes nationally or individually, and in the attempt to be successful, the entire human society becomes full of diplomacy. We should always remember that in spite of all diplomacy and all intelligence in the struggle for our existence, everything will end in a second by the supreme will. Therefore, all our attempts to become happy in this material world are simply a delusion offered by Maya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Sthapitam Mena Bhutale Swayam Rupakatamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Udapatakamelam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragana Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Saitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Saganalanta Shri Vishakanvitam Shicha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dilabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Murti Taptavanta Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwanashte Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpatarubhyasya Kapasindhute Vacha Patitanam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Wo Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Moham Karode Vachalam Pankam Nangayate Gurum Yakkapadamaham Bandhu Shri Gurum Dharna Paramanda Madham Shri Chaitanya Nishwara. Hare Krishna. So here in these two verses, we see here as to how it's explained about the situation of a typical karmi who is leading a family life. It's not applicable to devotees, but definitely we will discuss some points for which sometimes the early stages of devotion service, practicing sadhakas can also become a victim. So it's a lesson for my own purification and as also for those who are hearing. So in the first verse, Kapil Dev says that he gives heart and senses to a woman who falsely charms him with Maya. He enjoys solitary embraces and talking with her, and is enchanted by the sweet words of small children. So a typical materialistic person, when he leads his family life, is attached to his wife and his children. And as mentioned here, Srila Prabhupada mentions how a woman's form, beauty, etc. attracts a man. Not only that, it's vice versa also. And the pleasant talking between both of them. And then also thereafter, when one has children, at least in the initial stages when children are not grown up, they innocently talk so very nicely, so very sweetly. And real hardcore materialistic person gets carried away by these pleasant, pleasing, so-called pleasing attitude of the other half, and also the children. Now, when we say here that one gets carried away, this is clearly mentioned in the purport also. There are two types of householders. One is called a grihastha. A grihastha is one who lives with his family, with Krishna at the center. He understands the basic philosophy and purpose of human life, and also purpose of married life. The other one is a grihamedi. He does not have the knowledge of what is the purpose of human life and what is a married life, and he lives like any other person in the society. It's mentioned here as it's a society of cats and dogs. Like, for example, animals. Four common things that are common in all species of life, that is eating, mating, depending, and sleeping. But the purpose of human life is to inquire what is the purpose of life. So this is the only difference. And if one does not inquire and one does not make others inquire within the family, of course, one has to, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, preach to everyone, everywhere about the purpose of life. But if within a family, one does not inspire the others to make this inquiry, what is the purpose of life and what is the purpose of a married life? Because there are four ashramas. In brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyasi, one is expected to be completely celibate and live a life alone. Of course, in vanaprastha stage, sometimes when leaves the grihastha stage and enters into vanaprastha, initial stages of life, one is permitted to take his wife along, but ultimately one is supposed to, the wife is supposed to come back to her home to be taken care of by her children. That is very important. And the husband continues his vanaprastha life till the end, or he takes to the life of sannyasa. Now, when we say here vanaprastha or sannyasa, it is not just the order or putting a dress. The ultimate purpose of all these ashramas is to develop detachment, not attachment. Whereas if you look at a normal materialistic person, one gets there is a tendency for one to get attached to family and children. One really does not know that one's wife and children are there only in this life. In the next life, the husband may take the birth of a woman somewhere else, and the wife might take the birth of a man somewhere else, and the children may be somewhere of some other from not the previous life, maybe from any other life, or maybe for the first time in this life, depending on the karma. So many aspects are involved. So this is one science that only one who is in the Grihastha ashrama can understand. But a Grey Maidi just looks for passing time, enjoying sense gratification, watching TV, going to society like clubs and all those entertainment places, and trying to pass time for the purpose of sense gratification, thinking that this life is all in all. If I'm not able to enjoy this life, what is the use of this life? So these hardcore materialists, karmis, they think that the purpose of life is to enjoy your life as much as possible without even trying to inquire what is the purpose of life. So we'll try to understand some intricacies even in a married life as to how one can lead a successful married life, which is a real grihastha. Now, in a married life, a wife is considered a better half of the husband, whereas how they are supposed to live is that a wife is supposed to be chaste and the husband is supposed to be a brahmachari, celibate. When we say celibate, uh, connection between a man and woman is permitted only on certain grounds of procreation, not recreation. Recreation is entertainment, whereas procreation is for creating progeny who becomes who don't get entire that progeny does not get entangled in this cycle of birth and death. That means we are in the cycle of birth and death. We are given an opportunity to give birth to children who can be free from the cycle of birth and death, not to those type of children who also become entangled in the cycle of birth and death and trying to see how best to enjoy uh, life in this material world. So that depends on how one brings up the children right from the very beginning, even from the time of Garbhadana Samskar onwards. So that is why it is said that a good wife and a good husband, they cooperate in such a way so that uh, the husband remains celibate, remains a brahmachari in the ashram, and the wife remains chaste. When we say chaste, the wife is very loyal to her husband, whereas the husband, what happens is that he goes out to work, and in the course of his working outside in the outside world, he sees so many things beautiful, attractive, so many different types of people. In the Esther years, in the Vedic age, women were generally uh, at, situated at home, taking care of the children, the in-laws, etc. There are some quotes from Srimad Bhagavatam which are very, very valid even today, which I'll take you through. And the husband, what happens is that he goes to the outside world for his sustenance, and it is not very easy to get money these days for one to sustain. One has to work very, very hard, take a lot of challenges. The situation as every day passes is very, very difficult for one to go through. So what happens is that your husband who encounters all these situations outside, and when he comes back home, and the wife who is chaste to her husband, she takes care of him very well. The husband is pleased with his wife. The wife is also helping the husband to overcome the challenging situations that he comes across in the outside world. Irrespective of whatever profession one is, there are too many difficulties and challenges. But when he comes back home, a wife who is really Krishna conscious understands this position. And the husband also understands that after he comes back home, he needs someone who takes care of him. So it is mentioned that a wife is supposed to remain at home, be chaste to her husband. Now, in today's situation, what is happening is that generally we find both husband and wife mostly working together outside. The husband is exposed to different types of relationships with different types of people of the opposite sex also. And the wife also works outside. A wife who works outside, she is also exposed to different types of relations of the opposite sex in the working atmosphere. And what happens on top of that is that children are left either at what they call care homes, children's homes, or take care homes, different types of places where they are taken care of by nurses or guardians, temporary guardians, or whoever it may be. In the years, children were at home and they were given nice stories and pastimes from literatures like Mahabharata, Ramayana, etc. And children used to, who were born of good samskaras, they used to grow up under the care of grandparents and sometimes even great grandparents. And when when they hear these pastimes from the literatures, they become devotees of the Lord from the very beginning. So when they talk, they also talk about the pastimes. And in the case of husband and wife, when they are exposed to the outside world, to the opposite sex, then what happens is that both develop relationship outside of marriage. For a momentary period of time, both think the other relationship, life outside marriage is much more attractive. Why? Because this is a typical Grahamedi attitude. Grahamedi is one who lives for sense gratification. And in this case, the husband or wife, Grahamedi looks for bodily attraction. They don't look at the natural qualities of a woman which God has given. So they look at the beauty of the other sex and get carried away by that. And in the process, they develop relationship outside of marriage. And many times these days, if we see, there are living in families where they don't get married, boy and a girl stay together, stay for some time. They feel that they'll enjoy life. And what happens is that live a life of sense gratification. And once the man sees that, or the husband sees that the body of the other opposite sex is not any more attractive to each other, then they call it a day. And if they are married, then the resultant reaction is divorce. Today, this was a system prevailing in the Western world long back. But unfortunately, we are so good at copying the Western world that we have adopted this system also. And that is one of the reasons why we see so many divorces taking place in the human society today, irrespective of caste, community, faith, religion, etc. So why? Because in fact, one of the articles says, even in a material article says that everything is based on attraction of the body. Now, this material world is temporary. Everything is temporary. Even that includes the beauty of a man or a woman or even a child. Child, particularly in this loka, it mentions about one gets enchanted by the sweet words of the small children. Now, children at that age, until about 2 or 3 or 4, they are very innocent and they speak very innocently. So we get carried, an elderly couple, they get carried away by the sweet words of this child. But the same attraction for the children do not last forever. Why? Because as a child grows, these days, particularly during our days in the school or college, there was nothing like an internet. But school was highly disciplined. And after college, life was much more easy and comfortable. And of course, even during when people used to work, the society was not as contaminated as what we see today. But in today's world, society is so much contaminated, that polluted, that a child is used to seeing internet right from the time when he's 2 or 3 years old. He's exposed to the outside world. And in the case of the man and the woman, when they have a relationship outside of marriage, marriage itself ends up in a divorce. The new relationships that they develop ends in sense gratification, and over a period of time that also ends, because everything is temporary in this material world. And in the process, the children are left to their own, what you call, circumstances, and children don't have a love for their parents. They develop attraction more to those who are guiding them in their care homes or whatever, child care. And there is no attraction, feeling of affection for the parents toward the children also. This is something that we see in Kali Yuga. We see it degrading day by day. And I don't want to go dwell further into what is mentioned, the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's too early for us to go into that. But there is no value, or there is no respect for values in the society today. This is because of sense gratification. And specifically, it is mentioned here as how one can live a successful life. A wife who is very chaste should try to serve her husband in a very humble manner, so that the husband feels uh, satisfied. And the husband is supposed to take care of his wife in such a way, because she is also alone with her children. And of course, these days there is no relationship existing between a woman and her mother-in-law or daughter-in-law, whatever it is. And that is why there is a splinter, or what you call, families are separated from the time of marriage. Elders are staying separately. The next generation are staying separately. The further younger generation, it is said in the Western countries, the moment they finish the school, they don't live at home at all. They go to boarding schools, and life in boarding school need not be discussed in further. So this is what happens when marriage is not done with a proper samskara, and marriage is undertaken without understanding the proper purpose of life, particularly a married life. So that is why we see the resultant reactions in the society today. Whereas we see the same thing if we see examples of Ramayana. Now, people might say Ramayana is not relevant today, but it is very, very relevant. When Lord Rama was exiled to forest, he wanted to go for 14 years. But Mother Sita said that she wants to accompany him. Why? Because a woman is supposed to be a part of the family, and she takes a share of the husband's happiness or distress equally. And then finally, she managed to convince Lord Rama, and she accompanied him. Now, today, we might not see a woman who is prepared to take that austerity. Similarly, Gandhari, if you see, she was a very chaste lady devoted to her husband, Dhritarashtra. So when Dhritarashtra was blind, after she married Dhritarashtra, she kept herself blind until the end of her life almost. So this is what is chastity. A real woman understood the purpose of life is to serve her husband, and it was her husband's duty to protect her from being exploited by the society. Whereas today, women are generally exploited in the society, and they are a victim of molestation, rapes, and murders, and so many things that happen. This is because of a woman going out to work, not only to work at very odd times. Even women go to work at midday, and sometimes come at midnight, sometimes in the early hours of morning. The society is not built for that. So throughout the world, this phenomenon exists. But unfortunately, we are not ready for this, because we have had a very, very real Vedic culture. So Vedic times, the wife was always supposed to follow her husband, because the husband is supposed to be a representative of the Lord. Narayana, and the wife is supposed to be a representative of goddess Lakshmi. So even today we might find those who have come with proper samskaras and living a perfect grihastha life, living on these uh, situations. So in the Grihamedi stage, what happens is that even in a Grihastha stage, examples are given in Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, this current chapter also is about Lord Kapila Dev's instructions. If you see this situation, Lord Kapila was born to Mother Devahuti and she was married to Kardamuni. Devahuti was from a very opulent background. She was the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu. And whereas Kardamuni was a saintly person, he was a typical Brahmana, and Brahmanas are not opulent, they are not rich, they live a very poor life. Even if they have some opulence, they live a renounced life because they have a perfect understanding that whatever is there belongs to Krishna and they are meant to be used in the service of Krishna. So though Mother Devahuti was very from an opulent background, she served Kardamuni to such an extent that she became very skinny and very thin. It was difficult to recognize her also by that outward appearance. But Kardamuni, being pleased with her service attitude, he later created a palace mansion and he took her around and gave her some sense gratification because she decided to have children. This is natural tendency given by the Lord to a man and woman. A woman desires to have children, and a man's duty is to protect her by giving children to her who are supposed to take care of her forever. Forever means at least as long as she lives. That's why I said after Vanaprastha, sometimes when husband and wife go together, the husband is supposed to continue his Vanaprastha, either take sannyasi or become a Vanaprastha till the end of life, or if the wife accompanies, she comes back home to be taken care of her by children, taken care of by her children. This does not exist today. So that is why families are insecure. Many times we might find an aged man living alone or an aged woman living alone, or they are living, even if they are both together, they are living in old age home, which was never a system that was prevalent in the Vedic society because they were taken care of by children and grandchildren. So the society has degraded, seeing and replicating what has in the all this old age home and all existed in the Western world. And we are very happy to see that we are following all these practices, which are not very healthy. So how a wife is supposed to live, it is mentioned here. A wife should not be proud of her parental position. Even if she is from a very highly opulent family, she is not supposed to be proud. Example is Mother Devoti himself. She must always be submissive to the husband and must give up all vanity. But as soon as a wife becomes proud of her parentage, her pride creates great misunderstanding between the husband and wife, and their married life is ruined. So the example is Devavati was very careful about that, and she gave up her complete pride. And another point that is mentioned is the most sinful activity for a wife is to accept another husband or another lover. Now, this is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, just written 5,000 years before. So, purport was given by Srila Prabhupada. But this system, what we are seeing day in and day out, was written at that time, even when Srila Prabhupada written the commentary, long back. So, these are all important points that are given in the Shastra. Then it is mentioned, if a wife does not live well with her husband, like I said, it applies to both, but deals very roughly, then she is an enemy. So they are supposed to have a mutual and proper understanding in the interest of children. No two personalities are the same. There are always bound to be differences, but one should sit and sort them out so that children are not affected. Right? And specifically, it is mentioned that a chaste and faithful woman must not practice adultery. That is a greatly sinful act. It's a very sinful activity. That's why it is mentioned that we say always no illicit sex. Also, in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that when a living entity is in bewilderment, many times what happens is it's said that the man is has control of a wife. Uh, they say henpecked. But the thing is, they must both understand their positions properly. So therefore, it is mentioned in the Shastra that for material consideration, one should try to keep his wife satisfied by giving her all necessities. Wife also has requirement. He requires some wealth for sustenance. She requires children. So if a man who is a true husband satisfies her in this way, she also feels satisfied and she feels like she should serve her husband humbly and with love and affection. Though, of course, here Prabhupada also Srila Prabhupada mentions that there is no love in this material world. Whatever love is seen is only on the external bodily attraction. Otherwise, there is no love. But in the earlier Vedic age, people generally used to live in spite of all the misunderstanding. They used to live together. There was no separation. So therefore, it is mentioned in the Shastras that for one's own benefit and benefit of the family, one should try to keep his wife satisfied. There's also mentioned that how a woman must always be protected by her husband. Normally, it is mentioned in the Shastras that uh, a woman is always example is given of goddess of fortune. Goddess of fortune Lakshmi Devi is placed on the chest of Lord Narayana. So, in other words, the wife must be embraced and protected by her husband, and thus she becomes beloved and well protected by her husband. Just as one saves his money and places it under his personal protection, similarly, one should similarly protect his wife by his own personal supervision, not by security guards and other things, security guards or others. We find many times servants exploiting their masters of the opposite sex. Why? Because uh, they are not given the adequate care and protection. Then further it is mentioned, just as intelligence is always within the heart, so a beloved chaste wife should always have her place on the chest of a good husband. That means the good intelligent wife should have her love on the heart of her husband. That is proper relationship between husband and wife. Therefore, it is said that the wife is called Ardhangini or half of the body. Wife is supposed to be a half of her husband when they live in harmony together. So one cannot remain with only one leg, one hand, or only one side of the body. He must have two sides. We can see that we can't walk with one leg. We need something. So similarly, according to nature's way, a husband and wife should live together. Whereas the cats and dogs society is there where the lower species, they live like what we see in the common society today, humans. So whenever we see that husband and wife with proper arrangement live together, that is the ideal family life or a grihastha life. A home should be a place for devotion service, and the wife should be chaste and accepted by a ritualistic ceremony. In this way, one can become happy at home. This is a typical grihastha life. Why mentioned about is that what is mentioned in the purport is a typical grihameti, where a man gets attracted by the beauty of his wife, and then finally he does not realize that beauty anymore. He sees the external beauty, and then quarrels happen, misunderstandings happen. So examples are also given as to there's also mentioned that if any wife wants to be happy with her husband, she must try to understand the husband's temperament and try to please him. Whereas generally what happens is with women working, they look at themselves on the same platform as man and they want to enjoy everything like a man, which is not the right thing in the way, which was not practiced in the Vedic age. So it is said that when Lord Krishna was there, he married about 16,108 queens. He saw to it that everyone was satisfied. Of course, we cannot be like Krishna. But the point is that what is the takeaway for us from this? It is said that however great a woman may be, she must place herself before her husband in a very humble manner. That means she must be ready to carry out all her husband's orders and please him in all circumstances, then her life will be successful. Whereas if the wife becomes irritable, uh, then their life is more or less disturbed, and ultimately the relationships are broken, which is happening in the modern age. In the modern day, wife is never submissive, and therefore home life is broken even by slight incidents. A small quarrel might happen between a man and a woman, but then they part ways and divorce happens. In the Vedic age, there was nothing like a divorce, and there was no law for a divorce also. Why? Because there was a training for both man and woman. Man, when he was a boy, he was trained in Gurukul for perfect brahmacharya. That is where one gets a proper training. They were not trained in history and science and mathematics and English and all these things. They were trained in brahmacharya, celibacy. When that is attained, when he enters a Grihastha life, he has a perfect understanding of a Grihastha life. He does not live like a Grihamid. Similarly, a, a wife used to be trained at her home in chastity. So she becomes loyal to her husband, and she knows how to conquer the heart of her husband. However he may be, even if he is irritable or cruel, she knows how to take care of him. Because she understands her nature. They both are not of the same nature. That is one reason horoscopes were used to match before their marriage, because if they are of the same temperament, they may not be able to live for a long time. So the training of the boy is called brahmacharya, and the training of the girl is called chastity. So a faithful wife and a spiritually trained brahmacharis are a good combination for advancement of human mission. Also, a real wife is called dharma patni. That is, a woman is accepted in marriage by a ritualistic ceremony. That is why she is called dharma patni. Nowadays, even marriage as a ritual is not accepted by common man. That is why we find that there is a different understanding of married life. They don't have a proper understanding. That the real dharma patni means she is accepted in terms of religious principles, not materialistic principles. And when children are born out of dharma patni or a woman married according to religious principles, they inherit the property of the father, not otherwise. It's not a legal document of inheritance of property. Property means the wealth, not the material wealth, but the spiritual wealth. And a chaste wife is one who never had any connection with men before her marriage. That is a chaste woman. But nowadays we find that generally women also have connection before marriage with opposite sex. Why it is mentioned is, once a woman is given the freedom to mingle with all kinds of men in her youth, it is very difficult for her to keep chaste. So if a woman marries with, engages in relationship, or she freely mixes with men of the opposite sex, then after marriage it is difficult for her to keep chaste towards her husband. She cannot remain chaste. So example is given that when butter is brought into the proximity of fire, it melts. So you keep butter in front of fire, it melts. So a woman is like the fire and a man is like the butter. But if one gets a chaste wife accepted through a religious marriage ritual, she can be of a very great help when one is threatened by many dangerous situations of life. That means everyone is threatened by dangerous situations of life. But if both of them are loyal towards each other, they lead a successful married life. And said that actually such a wife can become the source of all the good intelligence. With such a good wife, the family's engagement in the devotional service of the Lord actually makes a house a grihasthasrama, or a household dedicated to spiritual cultivation. So when husband practices celibacy, accepting for procreation, and the wife becomes chaste to her husband, and both engage themselves in devotional service to the Supreme Lord, that house is a real perfect grihasthasrama, or one that is dedicated to spiritual cultivation. In that case, what happens? The husband also practices, the wife also practices, both of them share spiritual values, both of them go back to Godhead at the end of their lives, and children who are born out of such sanskaras, they are also not entangled in the cycle of birth and death. There is also mention as to how a true wife, it is said that a husband's duty is to protect his wife, but it is also true that a true wife or a chaste wife protects her husband by helping him in achieving the love of God. So a wife also helps in protecting her husband to attain love of God by helping him to practice spiritual values. She sees to it that how to make her children Krishna conscious. That is the true life love of a wife to husband or to her children. So a true love between a wife and husband and wife and children is development of Krishna consciousness. Uh, on the contrary, examples are given as to how in the Srimad Bhagavatam there's an example of Kashyapa Muni and the example of Diti. Diti actually, at one point of time, she wanted a son. Uh, now, there are always battles between the demons and demigods. So, the demigods, Indra killed the demons, and Diti actually wanted from Kashyapa Muni a son who could kill Indra. So, she had an ulterior motive for having a child also. And she pleased her husband with very nice, pleasing words. And in the process, she became afflicted by sex desire. And this is one of the reasons for the birth of two demons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So, thinking this way, Diti began constantly acting to satisfy Kashyapa Muni by her pleasing behavior. So, Diti carried out all of Kashyapa Muni's orders very faithfully as he desired desired. And with service, love, humility, and control, with words spoken very sweetly to satisfy her husband with smiles and glances at him, Diti attracted his mind and brought it under her control. So it is mentioned here how sometimes a woman may have an ulterior motive. Example is given of Diti, who was the mother of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, demon. So sometimes women may have an ulterior motive for sense gratification. And in the process, she might behave with husband very nicely, speak so very sweetly, which is the whole sum and substance of today's sloka number 8. And when a husband gets carried away and gives in to her, then what happens is that the same mentality is there at the mind at the time of conception, and that mentality is carried forward to the children. And it is mentioned as to how, though Kashyapa Muni was a very learned scholar, he was captivated by wife Diti's artificial behavior, which brought him under her control. So he came under control of his wife, but she had an ulterior motive. And in the process, two demons were born. Before I go further, I'll give some more examples. Now, some quote from Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada had a vision of even enlightening women spiritually. So he always in his lectures, even today, if you hear, he always says that women have to be protected first by father, then by husband, and then by son. That means that women have to be protected at all stages of their life. It is not that women are to be protected only in their married life. Women are to be protected even their young age by their father. Then she has to be protected by her husband, and later on by her son. So on one hand, Srila Prabhupada actually urged for protection of the women. At the same time, he also empowered many women disciples and gave them responsibilities also. And some good examples from the Shastras are given about Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj actually, he went back to Godhead. But he went back to Godhead because his mother advised him to perform austerities when he was asked to get down from the lap of her father by her stepmother. I mean, those days, Kshatriyas used to have many wives. and Dhruva Maharaj was asked to get up from his father's lap because stepmother wanted her son to be there. So Dhruva Maharaj became very, very upset, and he went to his mother, and when his mother said that you go to the forest and perform tapasya. Of course, not possible these days. But Dhruva Maharaj became so powerful, and he later on he came back to rule the kingdom of his father. And not only that, at the end of his life, at a very early age, he had a good family also. When he was going back to Godhead in his Vaikunta airplane came to pick him up. But when the airplane came to pick him up, all of a sudden he stopped and he said, I want to take my mother also, because she is the one due to whom I am today practicing. I became a devotee of God. So this is the role of a good mother in trying to bring her child into Krishna consciousness, by which she also got delivered and he also got delivered. So one time, what happened was when Srila Prabhupada was in the USA, he was discussing on this particular subject. So a reporter who was a man came to him and asked, why do you say that women are subordinate to man? So they are all equal, because the Western culture is man and women are equal. So this reporter asked this question, why do you call them equal? Srila Prabhupada replied, why don't you give birth to a child and breastfeed the child? Because a woman is entitled, she has been given the quality by Lord himself to give birth to a child, breastfeed the child, which is the real love for her child. Whereas a man cannot do that. A man is supposed to be very, very rational in his thoughts, but a woman is supposed to be very, very emotional. And it is she who can give love and affection to her husband as well as children also. So before I conclude, when man and woman work together with their respective natures, complementing each other, then there is a perfection in society. Whereas one who leads a life based on bodily attraction is a grihamedi. He lives only for the pleasure of which sex is the highest, and by which one gets entangled in this material world. And unfortunately, in Kali Yuga, the association of the opposite sex is so strong that every doorstep we might find even a packet of cigarettes advertisement outdoor, which might carry a woman photo or a car, whatever it is. Women are being more projected as a source of entertainment or pleasure than being taken care of, rather than protecting the women. This is how the society has degraded. And Sri Prabhupada, one more quote before I conclude the class. He says, man by himself is very good, and women by themselves are very, very good. But when they mix, they are very, very bad. There were no divorces in the Vedic culture. Once married, they were together in happiness and distress. That is why there was a child marriage. Women were restricted to in their movement. Earlier, nowadays, if you talk about child marriage, people will laugh at it. But why earlier there were child marriages? Because they both were chaste, boy and girl both were chaste and were loyal to each other. So when they married, they led a successful married life. So with this, I conclude the class for the day. Any of you have any questions or any comment for the next 1 minute? I can take it. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. You have explained everything about how grahasthas should be, how they shouldn't be, how we have to protect mothers, etc., etc. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you all very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, you please end the session, end the meeting to all.
End to all, huh? Okay.
Yeah.